The drought is over. The Georgia Bulldogs have won their first national title in 41 years. Ryan Flores will join the show to discuss all things NFL playoffs. And speaking of the playoffs, I'll give you the reason that each of the 14 teams will not win the Super Bowl. So a lot to discuss on Carving It Up Live, which starts right now. Drop that beat. Let's go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and we've got a loaded one for you guys today. Gonna have my man Ryan Flores joining the show a little later to discuss all things NFL playoffs. See him down in the comments. He's hyped, or not in the comments, in the waiting room. He's hyped, ready to go. Gonna discuss some of the recent coaching fires. Joe Judge out in New York. David Culley out in Houston. So again, that's kind of how it goes this week as you lead up to the wild card games and kind of to fill in the gap. We have a lot of coaches firings, as we had many on Monday and even on Sunday in the case of Vic Fangio. Going to discuss a Brian Flores story that is fascinating, and I want to kind of dive into that and why it shows you, to me, how, I wouldn't say dysfunctional, I'm going to put them in that group, but how mediocre the Miami Dolphins have been run for a while, and what they don't seem to get about this process, or maybe they're just in denial about a big mistake that they did make a couple of years ago. Going to discuss that, as well as there's something funny. We have this assumption that every single team going into the playoffs, or at least maybe a handful of them, like the championship contenders, like, oh, they have no flaws. Oh, no. They don't just have flaws. They have flaws that could be the end of their season. And all 14 playoff teams have at least one of them, or at least one big one. And at the end of the show, I'm looking forward to doing this, going to discuss all 14 of the playoff teams' biggest flaw, the one thing that could lose them a playoff game and cost them, especially the contenders, a chance to win the Super Bowl in Los Angeles. So a lot to get into today. But let me start with the obvious. The Georgia Bulldogs are national champions, and people in Athens, Georgia, and beyond that, Dawgs Nation everywhere, have been waiting to hear those words for 41 years. So first of all, congratulations to the Georgia Bulldogs. Congratulations to Kirby Smart. What a job he's done with this program, to the entire roster, to the fan base. By the way, I just got to give a big shout out to the fans of Georgia sports. And, people always talk about, I always use this example, like, Cleveland fans have suffered for a long time. Yeah, to a certain degree they have. But in the last few years, Atlanta sports / Georgia sports has been the definition of almost. Who could ever forget the 28-3 choke, the Atlanta Falcons, the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 51? That happened, breaking the hearts of every Falcons fan, particularly in the state of Georgia. Then you have, obviously, the Bulldogs get to the national championship game against, you guessed it, Alabama. They held a 13-0 halftime lead. Then they bring this guy Tua in. I'm going to get into Tua in just a second with this Dolphins story. But they bring in this kid, Tua Tagovailoa. He leads a comeback, including 2nd and 26 in overtime. He throws a 41-yard bomb to future Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith to win the national championship in the state of Georgia, in the city of Atlanta, to break Bulldogs hearts, Bulldogs fans' hearts everywhere. Then later in that calendar year, 2018, the SEC championship, the Georgia Bulldogs not once but twice held 14-point leads. And once again, Bama benched their starter, or not benched the starter. Tua got hurt in that game, but the backup came in and saved the day. In this case, it was Jalen Hurts, and hearts were once again broken across Athens. Let's not forget the fact that you have the Atlanta Braves blowing a 3-1 series lead over the LA Dodgers in the NLCS. One win away from the World Series. Couldn't get it done 3 straight times. And Game 7 especially came down to the wire. Couldn't get it done. And, of course, with the Atlanta Falcons, you have the muffed onside kick against Dallas. I mean, it was always something. They would invent new ways to lose. And so for Georgia sports, congratulations. But as far as the game, as far as the state of these two programs, it is this. For Alabama, first of all, obviously an outstanding season. They are the SEC champions. They're the defending SEC champions and will be going into the 2022 season. Bryce Young, remember, is only a sophomore. And I've made the argument that if he were eligible for the 2022 NFL draft, I think if the Jaguars at least didn't have the number 1 pick, I think he'd be the number 1 pick, or at least certainly the first quarterback selected. I like Kenny Pickett. I do. I like some of these quarterbacks, but Bryce Young, we're talking about the arm, accuracy, poise, leadership. He's got it all. Only thing he doesn't have is size, which concerns me a little bit because some of the smaller quarterbacks in the NFL have had some injury issues. And so, but that kind of comes with the territory. You take all the good stuff because they outweigh the bad. You look at people like Jamison Williams, who got hurt during the game. Prayers up to him. Hopefully, speedy recovery from that bad-looking ACL injury. I just read earlier today that he's declaring for the NFL draft. He should. Hopefully, he makes a full recovery. I wouldn't expect this injury to affect his draft stock too much. Personally, I don't see why it would. And so, just in general, for Alabama, they're young. Listen, it's Nick Saban, okay? They're going to recruit well. It's Alabama. I saw a video the other day of their facilities. It's ridiculous. They're nicer than some NFL facilities. It's unbelievable. So kids are going to still come to Alabama. Obviously, there's nothing to worry about long term. As long as Nick Saban's still there, you're good. Matter of fact, you're not good, you're great. So Alabama, they're already projected to be the number one team in America going into next season. Sounds about right because they bring back a lot of guys. So I'm not worried about that. Now, for Georgia, on the other hand, it's been a long time coming. You hired Kirby Smart before the 2016 season. Alabama's former defensive coordinator, probably, I would argue, Saban's best assistant, at least one of his longest tenured assistants, and the job that he did in regards to recruiting and as far as obviously developing the talent the way he did. They had a good year in 2016. I believe they went 7-5, 8-4, something like that. They had a good year. 2017, they break through. They get to the national championship game after winning the SEC championship game. We all know what happens against Alabama, heartbreak. And so you look at, of course, the year after that, they lost 2 games in the regular season, but had they won the SEC championship over Alabama, there's no doubt they would have been the first two-loss team to get into the college football playoff. But of course, as I detailed earlier, that did not happen. A year later, they only lose 1 game in the regular season, but then they run into LSU in the SEC championship game, thus dashing their playoff hopes once again. 2020 is sort of a step back year, right? Which, double-digit wins. They still got that. They still won the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. But for Georgia, it's like, if not now, when? And now, they don't have to worry about that. Stetson Bennett, it's a kid I doubted all year. All year long. I wasn't sure. I got the mobility, can move around. I like that with quarterbacks. But his decision-making at times, folks, was like, what the heck are you doing? By the way, his decision-making after the game on Good Morning America was just as questionable, but I'll leave that for other people to discuss. But Stetson Bennett in general, in the fourth quarter, Bama had just taken the lead. Bryce Young drove him down after the turnover, which, by the way, I think that was a fumble. The ball's coming out of his hand. He's got an empty hand delivery. I think that was a fumble. But Bryce Young, touchdown, Bama's in front, and you can maybe start to sense, okay, here come the tide. Here comes the pressure back on to Georgia. And Stetson Bennett's credit, he didn't flinch. Made every big throw he had to. Made every good decision he had to. The running game was outstanding. Of course, he hit the young freshman tight end, who, by the way, is unbelievable. That guy's going to be playing the NFL like a lot of these Bulldogs are going to be someday. But the freshman tight end for the touchdown to put Georgia up by 8. When it is all said and done, Bryce Young, when aiming for yet another fourth quarter comeback. It was starting to feel like shades of Auburn in the Iron Bowl when Bryce Young drove them from 97 yards away to tie the game. They ultimately won it in quadruple overtime, but it wasn't meant to be this time. Alabama drives down, and Bryce Young throws a pick that gets returned the distance for the touchdown. By the way, I've never seen Kirby Smart get that high up. I know he's a former defensive back, but holy cow, he got up there after that interception. I guess that's what adrenaline can do to you. But Georgia clinched it. They won the national championship by an unusual score, 33-18. But, again, if this wasn't going to be the Georgia team that won it, when was it going to be? Because Alabama had injuries all over the place. We already knew about Mechie, tore his ACL in the SEC championship game against Georgia. Then you have Jamison Williams, who is starting to step into that number one role, like, this guy can't be covered. And all of a sudden, he goes down. So at some point, I get you have a lot of 5-star recruits, but you got to let them develop. And it got to a point where Bryce Young's most reliable target was the slot receiver, Bolden. And so you weren't really sure where he was going to go on some of those deep balls. And ultimately, it was Stetson Bennett who made the great throws down the field that won the game for Georgia. But, credit to the Bulldogs, unbelievable season. Really, for the majority of the season, they were the best team in college football. I said, even when I picked Alabama on Monday's show, I said, I think Georgia's better. I mean, I really do. I said, but if it comes down to the quarterbacks, I'm going to take Bryce Young over Stetson Bennett. Well, ultimately, it did come down to the quarterbacks, and it was Stetson Bennett who got the best of the Heisman Trophy winners. So credit to Georgia. You absolutely deserve this national championship. The recruiting, outstanding, and it's only going to get better. It's only going to get better. Kirby Smart is as good a coach as there is in college football. And people say, well, he recruits. Trust me. I know as a Tennessee football fan, Tennessee Vols, and yay, we get to play these two teams every year. Hooray for us. We're already 0-2 for 2022. Just go and put it in the books. But we hired a guy by the name of Butch Jones years ago. Butch could recruit, man. But couldn't develop it. Guys like Alvin Kamara. You know what he was doing at Tennessee? He was the backup running back. He wasn't even the starter. Juwan Jennings. Look what Juwan Jennings did for the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. He was the number 2 receiver at Tennessee. So Butch Jones could never get the most out of his talent. Kirby Smart did, and will continue to do so. So this is a Georgia program set up for the future, and whether Stetson Bennett will come back, we'll see. But, this is a well-oiled machine, and if, Georgia ultimately did what they came to do, did what they built their program to do, beat Alabama. That's what it was about. Beat Alabama, because we know if we win this national championship, we got to go through that team. When it was all said and done, finally, they did. Got a few comments here. My man Philip here. He says, when do you think Nick Saban will retire? That is a good question. Whenever he wants. I mean, he's got a contract, as good of a contract as there is in sports, because I think it's in his deal. It's like some sort of, I don't know if it's an incentive or something in his deal that says that whoever becomes the next highest paid head coach, Nick Saban's salary instantly is a tick above that guy, whoever it is. So Nick Saban clearly hasn't lost passion for coaching. He loves developing young kids. Of course, he makes bank too. That doesn't hurt. He loves putting rings on his finger every other year. So that's kind of how it works if you're Alabama. But I wouldn't count on it anytime soon. That's what I would say. Barry says Georgia was amazing and loved the outcome. Absolutely. I mean, everybody's kind of rooting for the underdog, but it was kind of weird because Georgia was not the underdog. They were favored -2.5. Bama was the underdog, quote unquote, in this game, at least according to Vegas. But, there was sort of that doubt, especially for Georgia going into that game against Michigan. I picked Michigan to win. I was like, oh, I don't know. It didn't look so good against Alabama. That was their first real competition all year, and they came in and just mollywopped Michigan. And that kind of made me sit up like, oh okay. Yeah, they're back. So, and John just says Bennett still partying. Yeah, apparently he is. That was a bad interview. All right, let me move on to a story that I thought was really interesting by the New York Post about this whole Brian Flores situation. Of course, you heard my thoughts on that on Monday. The whole clip is on YouTube, so if you want to go check that out, then check that out. But there's a new story that came out that I thought was really, really, really interesting. So, according to the New York Post, it says a day after the Dolphins fired their former head coach, a new report says he had an F-bomb-filled meltdown with the quarterback, with Tua Tagovailoa, at one point this season. According to the South Florida Sun-Centennial, during halftime of a Week 16 loss to the Titans that crushed the Dolphins' playoff hopes, Tagovailoa claimed that Flores doesn't know how to talk to people. Flores, meanwhile, reportedly said he needed better bleeping play from the quarterback. So I thought this was really interesting. Because to me, what it shows on the part of the Miami Dolphins, and the Chicago Bears dealt with the same thing a few years ago. The Dolphins are in denial about their quarterback. That's what's going on, and I'll explain it. It's so similar to what the Bears dealt with a few years ago. And similar a little bit to the Rams, but I'll get into that. Let's start with the whole Rams analogy. Remember last year when the Rams lost a game that they really shouldn't have to the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco was beat up. I think Nick Mullins started that game, and the 49ers were fully healthy and Jared Goff at the helm, and they ended up losing. Goff committed like multiple turnovers. And according to reports out of LA, McVay just went off on Goff in front of the team after the game, and they said that was kind of the end of their relationship, at least for that season. I think they're cool now from what I know, but definitely didn't help their relationship whatsoever. But what do the Rams do? They're not in denial about their quarterback, or at least they weren't at the time. They said, you know what? We need to do better. Matt Stafford is better than Jared Goff. Let's go to him. Okay. There was no, that I know of, sort of, at least what this article classified as a meltdown between, what's his name? Matt Nagy and Mitchell Trubisky. But it's the same thing. Mitchell Trubisky was drafted second overall in 2017 by the Chicago Bears, infamously in front of Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. And for years and years and years, Mitchell Trubisky's the guy. He's a franchise quarterback. He's going to get better. You just got to wait. Did it ever happen? No, he's Josh Allen's backup in Buffalo now. Deshaun Watson, we'll see what happens with him legally, but on the field, we have no doubts about his capabilities as a quarterback. Patrick Mahomes, hey, his resume speaks for itself. MVP, Super Bowl MVP, champion. Once again, the Chiefs are poised for yet another run. Mitchell Trubisky's a backup. Same case here with Tua. So Joe Burrow's taken number 1 overall, but he factors in a little way that I'll get into in just a second. But Tua is drafted with the 5th overall pick. By the way, Chris Greer wanted Tua, according to reports. Brian Flores wanted Justin Herbert. And Herbert, of course, went the very next pick to the Los Angeles Chargers. Reports weeks before that, I remember talking about this on my show at the time, said that the Miami Dolphins were interested in trading with the Cincinnati Bengals for the number 1 pick to go get Joe Burrow. But ultimately, Cincinnati said, no, we're good. But Brian Flores is sitting there saying, timeout. I could have had, hope against hope. It'd have been a tough trade to make, but I could have had Burrow, and I darn sure could have had Justin Herbert. And I see what those two quarterbacks are doing. Joe Burrow got the Bengals to the playoffs, and Justin Herbert nearly got a coach who doesn't seem to know what the heck he's doing half the time to the playoffs. And I'm stuck here with Tua. Yeah, I may be a little mad. I'm gonna be a little mad. And so what it shows by the Dolphins is they're saying, oh, Brian Flores is the issue. It's not Tua. Tua's not the issue. Tua's going to develop into... No, he's not. No, he's not. Maybe he develops into a starting caliber quarterback. I'm not betting against that in the slightest. But he's not even in the same league as those other two guys. So, just like the Bears with Mitchell Trubisky, they're trying to convince themselves. Because look, we all know, it goes with psychology. Psychologists will tell you this. If you tell yourself something enough times, eventually you'll believe it. They've convinced themselves Tua's the guy. No, he's not. Burrow is the guy in Cincinnati. Herbert's the guy in LA. Tua's not the guy in Miami. Deshaun, at least for the time being, was the guy in Houston. Mahomes is the guy in Kansas City. Trubisky was not the guy in Chicago. And we see that now. Trubisky's good. I mean, he's a nice quarterback, but he's not even close to the level of those two guys. It's history repeating itself, really. And so they blame the coach, but not the quarterback. That makes no sense to me. And it shows that the Dolphins are okay with beating mediocre. The quarterback away. But apparently they didn't recognize that. Before I get, okay, I don't know what that is. Some sort of weird comment. All right. So he is the host of Clutch Sports Talk. Let's give a big round of applause and a big welcome. To Ryan.
Hey.
Talk. Ryan, appreciate you coming on the show, man. How you doing?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it. I like that little drum roll. That's pretty fresh there. I like that.
That's what the whole look for the show is about, being fresh. I got to give you credit too for the YouTube and Twitter and Facebook watchers. Ryan actually created this overlay that you see right now, so he deserves the credit for that. I didn't do anything in regards to that, so shout out to you, my man.
Thank you.
But I had to get into what's your thoughts on the Brian Flores situation? It's bizarre on a lot of levels, but specifically with this. this sort of report about him and Tua that just came out?
Honestly, I'm not surprised with that. If the report's correct, he should be upset with Tua. And if he did, in fact, want Justin Herbert, oh my God, dude. Talk about letting the one get away, right? I mean, the Dolphins would have been in pretty good fashion with a quarterback like Justin Herbert. But his firing, obviously, we all know this. That was the most weird firing out of all the firings so far that we've had this past week. So, but like you said, the Dolphins are definitely in denial. They think they have their guy in Tua, which I was not high on Tua really that much anyway to begin with. Because again, he had a lot of talent in Alabama he's throwing to. And then he had the injury situation that he was coming back from. And I think he's not a big guy. And I'm not saying you have to be big to be a quarterback, because you got Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson's like stocky. He's got a strong arm. What is one thing that we know about Tua that he was really, really good at? Okay, maybe it's accuracy, perhaps, maybe, but
Yes.
you got to be able to fire that ball, man. And he doesn't have the arm strength, and his decision making is still pretty bad. I get it, but Brian Flores to me should be mad. And honestly, if I'm him, at the end of the day, I'm waking up, the day after the firing, I'm like, you know what? It's cool. Like, I'm going to go somewhere where I'm going to probably get a good quarterback, because now I can choose where I go, and hopefully with the remaining teams that are available, he might have that opportunity. The two teams that pop up to mind, the Raiders and the Bears. I like him actually here in Las Vegas if they don't decide to keep Bisaccia on.
Bisaccia, yeah.
Because Derek Carr I don't like the Raiders, but I respect Derek Carr a lot. That would be a great tandem right there. And then you got Justin Fields in Chicago. He's young, but he's better than Tua, I would think. So we'll just have to wait and see.
I think the Raiders would be a much better fit, because look, obviously they're further along than the Bears are. They have a better roster as a whole, and yes, you would be going to the AFC West, which does have Mahomes and Herbert,
right.
And we'll see what Denver does with their quarterback situation. But I think when you have, and I'm going to get into the Raiders a little later with the whole playoff weakness segment I'm going to be doing, but offensively, they're fine. Like, they've got the running game. The offensive line is still kind of a work in progress, but they're getting better in that regard. And Derek Carr certainly has the weapons. Darren Waller, Zay Jones and company, and Hunter Renfrow. Their biggest bugaboo's defense. Well, what better, than to bring Brian Flores in the room? Look what he did for the Dolphins defense in just 3 years. I mean, that thing was,
it was pretty bad. And honestly, to be real about it, the Raiders' defensive line is really good.
It is.
You got Max Crosby, Ngakoue, Filen, whatever his name was. He got hurt the other night. They got some guys on that front four. They just need to shore up the back end. And like you said, Brian Flores could be that guy to do that. So there's not a lot of, and matter of fact, I remember I was on your show at the beginning of the season, and I did say the Raiders would make some rumblings in there. They ended up making the playoffs.
Yeah. You told me.
Because I knew. Because at the end of the day, football is so simple, man. You protect your quarterback, you rush the other team's quarterback. And they can pretty much do that for the most part. The biggest question, would their defense be able to hold up? Now, are they an elite defense? No. But, we've seen in the NFL how one team could be very terrible at one thing and then next year lead the league in something. A la the Dallas Cowboys. They were like dead last almost in every defensive category last season. You bring in a new coach, a new system, you move some pieces around, and boom, maybe they're not elite, but they're better than what they were before. And I think the Raiders would actually be a good job for any head coach to come here.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And that's what Barry says. Barry says, I think Vegas is the most attractable job right now.
Yep.
I mean, I agree with you. You look, I mean, to me, Chicago is more of, I think you got to bring an offensive coach in there, same in Jacksonville, to help develop these young quarterbacks.
Right.
Derek Carr's a veteran. There's nothing.
He doesn't need an offensive minded guy. He knows the offense. He's good.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Cooper Constantine says, Bryson, what's up from all the way from Australia? And he says, Michael McCorkle Jones.
Stop it.
I don't know, Barry.
He loves this guy so much. We'll see. We'll see what he does. We'll see what he does this weekend.
To people. Oh gosh, yeah.
We'll see.
I have my doubts in 0 degree weather.
Right.
I have my doubts.
He better wear that scuba suit again.
He better. That's what Tom wore for years in New England. But hey, listen, to all the people out there who are single, if your significant other does not love you as much as Barry Grant Jr. loves Michael McCorkle Jones, they're not worth it.
Yeah.
They're just not worth it. But let me move on to a couple other firings real quick. You had, this one kind of made me laugh, the Joe Judge situation in New York. And then earlier today, just a couple hours ago,
Right.
David Culley was fired from Houston. Let's
Right.
start with Joe Judge because it was so weird. Monday, it comes out that he's going to come back in 2022.
Yep.
And then a day later, Joe Judge has been fired. I see the tweet by Adam Schefter. I'm like, well, what happened in 24 hours? What's kind of your takeaway on the Joe Judge, the brief stint for 2 years that it was, and sort of the Giants doing a complete 180 in just the span of a day?
I mean, I'm sad they let him go. As a Cowboys fan, I would love to see him stay there just to kind of keep ruining that organization. I never understood the hire to begin with, like Joe Judge, like I don't know. That just sounds weird. Like, I don't know. And what was he before when he came over? What was he in New England? I forgot what he was exactly.
He was the special teams guy
Okay.
in New England.
Okay,
But
special
he did a
teams.
good job there, but
He did.
it was a weird hire. I agree with you.
Weird hiring, and I'm just like, and everyone thought at first it was going to be great, and I'm like, listen, here's the thing about the Giants you got to understand too. Their roster, maybe besides the defense, it's not a great roster overall. I mean, they're gonna have to figure out who's going to be their quarterback, number one. Okay. And Joe Judge, Daniel Jones really wasn't his guy, was it? I don't know. Was Jones there before Judge?
He was drafted the year before.
Okay. And they never decided to go and try to do something about that. They thought maybe he can do something, right? Saquon, I'll be honest with you, man. Saquon is, I'm not gonna say he's a bust, but he really, I don't think is gonna live up to the hype that was given to him or bestowed upon him when he entered the league. He's still a good back, but again, injuries. Their offensive line is a shambles. They never addressed that with Gettleman. I mean, the only bright spot of that team was the defense. Then they go out and get all these receivers. Kenny Galladay didn't have any touchdowns this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope.
As a receiver, and they spent a lot of money on that guy. You know what I mean? Sterling Shepard, I like him. He's not a number one, right? And he's injury plagued too. He's going to be coming off of another Achilles or some AC or something that he injured.
Serious one. Excuse me, I think it was Achilles.
Achilles, right? So then you bring Joe Judge into the picture, and it's like, well, what is he going to bring? See, when you have a situation like that, you need a guy that can bring stability, right? Not a brand new rookie head coach in the NFL. You need a guy that's been around the league. He knows how to kind of finagle his way. And then on top of it, like I told you before the show, and we'll talk about this here in a second, but with Culley, who did he bring with him? A lot of people think, oh, it's the head coach's fault. Dude, you're only as good as your assistant star. You look at all the great coaches in football, anywhere from Nick Saban to Bill Belichick. Look at how many of their guys get opportunities. That means you're doing something right, and someone notices that, right? Who could Joe Judge bring in, right? We question his ability. At least I did to begin with. Like, what was he going to do better than any other coach? It's a reason why they basically flat out sucked at hiring their last three coaches, right? You had Pat Shurmur, he was there for like a cup of coffee. Ben McAdoo, like that didn't work out. And then now it was this guy, right? And then there might have been somebody sprinkled in between. I don't even know.
No, that was the last three after Coughlin.
Okay, right. So it's kind of like, well, who should they get next? Obviously, and then another thing with the Giants, I'm sorry, and I'm backtracking. How do you pick the coach, right? Or how was it? Basically, like someone didn't have a say in the GM, whoever was going to be there, didn't have a say in the head coach. Like, how does that not work? Like, you would think the GM would want to pick his own guy. It's like, so I think the Mara family, they need to maybe step back just a little bit, because honestly, that's where it starts. It starts with them overall. Yes. And then don't forget Steve Tisch. I mean, people don't realize who Steve Tisch is. He's 50% owner of the New York Giants, but he's not even that involved. He lives here and not here, but in LA. So he flies back and forth. He's like a Hollywood guy. So there's a lot of chaos starting at the top. And I think you're right, or you are right. They were going to stay with him, but I think the clamor from the fans, it was not a good PR look to keep this guy around. And I think they may have had a meeting. They probably tried to lay down some ground rules, and Joe Judge was like, nah, man, like, doesn't make any sense to me. And they were like, we got to get rid of him.
I agree with you. I just think from the beginning, I was with you. I remember when it happened, I said on the show, I said, what are the Giants hoping to accomplish by this?
Right.
Like it didn't, when you hire a coach, depending on the status of the organization, say you're a team like the Dallas Cowboys, they fire Jason Garrett,
Right.
and they bring Mike McCarthy in. You're no develop, guy. Our objective in hiring you is for you to help us win a championship
Right.
because, Jason Garrett couldn't. If you're a team like, say, the New York Giants, you're in a rebuilding situation. In that case, they had a young Daniel Jones. And so it's bring a guy in, develop him. You got to have a goal and a set objective in mind. I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just questioning what it was to begin with.
Yeah.
And so I think the thing with Saquon, too, I will defend Saquon in this regard because the offensive line was so bad.
Right.
I mean, I can only think just off the top of my head, at least in the last, I'd say 30 years, of one running back who had a bad offensive line and made it work, and that was Barry Sanders.
Yes.
Barry Sanders.
He's probably the only back that I can think about that had a terrible offensive line and made it work.
Yeah, 100%. So
but you're right about Saquon. I mean, it's partly not all his fault. The offensive line sucks, and then he just can't stay healthy either. So it's a combination of both. It's just sad because I thought he was going to be like a menace, especially in the NFC East. Like I thought he was going to be a lot of trouble for a lot of teams, and he just hasn't been able to stay on the field, and they can't.
No, he hasn't. That's been his issue. So hopefully he can stay healthy next year. I mean, even if he is a New York Giant, even if he's not, I mean, you want dudes to stay healthy and hopefully show how great players they are as long as it's not against the Cowboys. But let's in the same state as the Cowboys, Houston Texans just fired David Culley today.
Yes.
Here was my takeaway, and I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
It felt a lot like the Steve Wilkes situation in Arizona. They've got the young quarterback in Josh Rosen, who clearly did not work at all. I mean, we see Josh Rosen's on his 15 in 4 years.
Right.
With Steve Wilkes, he comes into Arizona. He's got his staff. I mean, unlike Culley, at least Steve Wilkes got to bring his staff in. But it's weird. He only gets 1 year to in a bad franchise to really show what he's capable of, and then after 1 year, they give him the boot. My perspective is, why even hire the guy if you're going to bring him in? And to me, Houston, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought Houston played pretty well the last month of the season.
They played hard. They played hard.
They played hard. They upset the Chargers and nearly denied the Tennessee Titans the number 1 seed.
Right.
And I really like what I've seen from Davis Mills as of late.
Right.
And so what's kind of your takeaway in the David Culley situation as a whole?
I think to kind of double back to your comparisons with the Cardinals, I think it's two different franchises, number one. I think the Cardinals in the last 10 years, they've had some bad teams, but you can see that ownership group team with the GM and the owner, Bidwell, they are really all in about winning. They have shown the ability that, we're going to make moves. We're going to do what we got to do. So they bring in Wilkes, they bring in Rosen, and they say, these guys suck. Let's get them out of here. Why keep them? Right. And as far as the Texans are concerned, they've made bad move after bad move after bad move. So when they bring in Culley, my whole thing is, and people are like, oh my God, it's so sad. Like, it's really not that sad. I think David Culley knew, hey, you know what? I've been in the NFL like 50 something years. No one has ever even approached me about being an NFL head coach ever, at least out of any reports. I've never heard this man's name ever be considered for any coaching job since I've been alive. I'm 37, about to be 38 in a couple of weeks. I didn't know who this guy was. Like, there's this guy on TikTok. He goes, who? That guy, like, who? Like, who's David Culley, right? I don't know, right? So he gets the job. It is what it is. That roster is depleted, right? No Deshaun Watson. Davis Mills, I'm not going to hold my breath on him. I mean, he's a rookie. There's no film on him yet. Let's see what he does next season, right? That's when you kind of know about quarterbacks. You have no running game, no wide receivers. Your defense, they played hard, but this is the National Football League. It's not about, Timmy, you guys played hard. Let's go get some ice cream. It's a business, people. They could have beaten the Titans. I get that. And let's be real. The Titans were probably like, you know what? We got this team. We were up big. We let them back in the game. That happens. All right. So don't give me this stuff about, they finished strong. Like, that's great and all. But those guys are also playing for their own futures too. And it's maybe not even with the Texans. There's coaches, there's scouts watching all these games week 18 because they know teams on the teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Texans, they got all these guys that are going to need jobs next season. So to come full back to David Culley, I don't think it was a great hire to begin with because you knew the situation. He just wanted a gig. I think at the end of the day, he got his head coaching job and he'll probably retire. I would not be surprised if the guy retires from the National Football League. You've been in the game that long. You got your head coaching job. You're going to get your paycheck because I think they signed him to like a multi-year deal last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
We can probably look that up. So he's still under contract, getting paid as a head coach. So do I feel bad for him? No, he's a millionaire. Like, why would I feel bad for a guy like that? But again, I understand where everyone's coming from, because the race thing comes up again. He's a black coach. He got fired. And I get that. And I would be remiss to say that maybe that didn't play a factor. I don't know, because we see a lot of white coaches, they suck too, and they get more of an opportunity. But I think and David Culley needed to know this before going into this job. Like, do I really have a chance? And if I do, okay, then they screwed me over. But realistically, you have to know you don't have a shot without Deshaun Watson. And if he thought he was going to get another chance, I doubt it. Because listen, do we know how fluid the National Football League is? Teams are constantly changing over their rosters, their organizations. And like I told you before the show, I don't think this is not that bad of a job. Maybe the talent isn't necessarily where it should be, but you're in a division that, obviously the Titans are the king in that division. But listen, you play the Jags twice. You're going to play the Colts, who we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be for the Colts next season, right? And maybe you could split one with the Titans, which obviously they've shown the ability to compete with them. Why not? You're in Texas. There's no state tax. Cost of living is cheaper. It's Texas. They love football, right? You got a beautiful stadium. I don't know what their facilities are like. It's not a bad job, but they need to find someone young and invigorating. Because a lot of times when I was watching those Texans game, Cully would just be sitting there like looking like someone's uncle, like he looked confused a lot of the times. And to me, that just didn't. The optics really just didn't look that great for me. And I know I was long-winded on that one because I was catching some flack on social media for this Cully firing, and I'm like, it's okay. The Texans will be better for it in the long run, and so will he, because he's guaranteed like 5 years, so he's good. Sorry.
No. I mean, I think I see your perspective. The one thing I will absolutely 100% disagree with you on is that I don't think the Houston Texans does a good job for the simple fact that Davis Mills may be the guy. I mean, I like Davis Mills.
Right.
The rest of the roster is horrible. I mean, it's a bad roster. And you look at some of the stories that have come out of Houston the last few years, obviously the late owner and what he said about, players, I think being like, I can't remember the word that they used to describe him, but it was
right.
Very,
it's not the greatest job, but I think
right.
If you get the right person, it could be a pretty good, decent job. I think. I mean, but Bill O'Brien, for whatever it was worth, even though he kind of screwed that team on his way out, they were in the playoffs a couple of times with that roster. They had JJ Watt, they had
the roster Hopkins. Was better though.
It was better then, and then before he got out of there, he jettisoned all those guys out of there. But I think if they can find a way to, start to bolster your offensive line, run the ball a little bit, you can protect Davis Mills if he's your guy right now. Obviously, I don't think he's a stud like that, and this year's draft class is really not that great. So maybe you do hold on to him, and maybe you pick one of these other guys, perhaps, because I don't know where they're picking at. But we've seen it before. You can protect your quarterback by running the football and playing complementary football, right? Because there's no quarterback in this draft right now that I can say that can actually go out and be a franchise quarterback. I mean, that's just a fact.
No, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, there's not a quarterback in this draft. I'm like, oh man, you have to draft this guy.
Overwhelmed by his ability.
No.
Like, you're like, oh my God, I got to have this guy. No.
I definitely side with you there. I think with Cully, my thing is this, and you could say from his perspective, hey, he's out of there and he's getting paid money. I'm talking about not necessarily for Cully individually, but just I mean, even if we want to go here for the immediate future, maybe even the long-term future for the time being of African-American head coaches. And I mean, as it stands right now, Mike Tomlin's the only African-American coach in the NFL. I mean, I think that's a problem that has to be addressed.
Right.
And so, when you have situations like Cully, and this is why I compare it to Steve Wilkes, 1 year gone. I'm not here to say Steve Wilkes would have been Belichick. Of course not.
Yeah, but he didn't get a fair, I see what you're saying. Like, he didn't get a chance to kind of improve,
establish a culture.
Himself. But I think a lot of times too, though, and again, I know the race things will comes up, but I didn't see anything during the Wilkes regime that I was like promising of, like, it was like something like, oh, you know what? I can really hang my hat that the Cardinals will be better next season. And I know that's happened in the course of the National Football League, and coaches get time and time again, chance after chance. But for me personally, watching their games, I remember that year, there was nothing good about Arizona Cardinals football.
No.
And then you bring in a new coach, and then they get Kyler Murray, and just like that, everyone forgets about what happened. Because at the end of the day, it's about winning. That's all we care about as fans is winning. Whether you're white, black, purple, pink,
of course,
wins are not racial. Winning is
of
winning.
course not. No. My curiosity was because there seemed to be, and I think even Deshaun Watson said at the time before all the allegations came out, that he told the Texans he wanted them to hire a black coach. Well, Eric Bieniemy was available in Kansas City. If we want to talk, say Culley's, maybe he's not qualified or he hasn't been mentioned as a head coach. Okay, fine. Go get Bieniemy.
Right, at least.
So that's kind of my thing. Least. That's what John just said in the comments here. He said Eric B's going to get the job. If I can pull up, he said Eric B's going to get the job. I think that would work.
You're right, honestly, but I'm not a fan of him either because Andy Reid calls the plays. So
he does.
How much of a coordinator is he?
But Doug Peterson also was in Kansas City, and he won a Super Bowl. Even though he got fired, he's still being considered. I think Doug Peterson's a decent coach.
But Frank Reich called the plays.
That's true.
So you know what I mean? Like,
Eric
Bieniemy, his name comes up a lot, but I got to see him on his own 2 feet call the plays and then run his show. I'm not saying he's not a good coach.
Yeah.
Because obviously he's earned that right to be an offensive coordinator, right? Asterisk, because he don't call the plays. But until he can call his own shots, I don't know how much. Because why is he good? Why is he getting overlooked? It's a reason. It's a reason behind that. It's a reason why maybe he goes into these interviews and he can't answer some of these questions as a real offensive coordinator would, because he doesn't call the plays.
Possibly, although I did see a clip from his. I remember last year when he was being considered for some of these jobs. It was like it was. I can't remember exactly what it was about, but I remember watching at the time thinking, "How is this guy not getting a job?" Like there's certain I remember, and look, he's turned out to be a decent fit. Like Nick Sirianni had the worst press conference this side of Dan Campbell. It was just a disaster. I think it's all about giving the right guys opportunity. Like. True. Here's the thing. David Culley may have, he was qualified, but, spending the last 25 years, like, some of the comments and you've mentioned, he wasn't brought up. My thing is, what am I trying to say with this? So if you're going to hire and give black coaches opportunities, give the guys who actually have a chance the job. So the guys that don't have a chance don't make the guys that do have a chance look bad.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying. And I feel like that's the issue with some of the hiring process in the NFL.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. Because you look at the Dan Campbell situation, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other African-American candidates out there that were probably better than Dan Campbell. Let's just be real. I'll be real with that. You know what I mean? And I want to put out this factor about Brian Flores. He isn't, I wouldn't consider him African-American. His parents are from Honduras. So nowhere near Africa. So I just want to throw that out there. So he's purely Honduran in Central America. So he would be considered a Central American coach like myself. My people are from Central America. But people look at me and they think I'm black, but I'm really not fully black because my mom is Hispanic and my dad is an African mix, but they're from Belize. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't know why I wanted to. I just felt like I need to say that because someone said, oh, well, Brian Flores and Mike Tomlin were the only 2 black coaches. Well, yes and no. I'm just, yes and no.
No, I understand what you're saying. But it's I'm interested to see where Houston goes from here because they got a ways to go. That's what we do know for a fact. They got a ways to go. Okay, let's shift to the playoffs for a second. Sometimes when you go to bed and you have like an epiphany and you're like, okay, I got to write this down so I remember it. I had one with the Dallas Cowboys. I was going to bed. I was thinking, hold on a second. They've got some similarities.
Right.
Call me crazy. You call me crazy. People in the comments call me crazy. But they've share a few similarities to last year's Buccaneers. There's a few reasons why. Number one, okay, both teams lost 5 games. Okay, that's very obvious to point out. All right, both teams got hot in the last month and a half of the season. Both teams, Tampa certainly last year, they had some questionable losses, right? They get blown up by 5 touchdowns by the Saints. They lost that game to the Bears, which Tom Brady forgot it was 4th down. And then they had some unimpressive wins. I remember when Tampa played the Giants last year and the Giants failed in a 2-point conversion that would have tied the game. Right. And so, for the Cowboys, they've had some wins like that. Say, that game, against the same team, the Giants didn't look overly impressive the second go around, but then they have wins, say, against the, I don't know, the Carolina Panthers, call them what you may, but where they look like they're just clicking on all cylinders.
Right.
And certainly against Washington the second go around a couple of weeks ago. Call me crazy. Do you see the similarities between the two? Like a lot of people never fully really bought into Tampa Bay until like around the NFC Championship game.
Right.
What's kind of your thoughts on my comparison for that?
I don't know. I don't think I necessarily agree. I think the Cowboys only really, to me, there were only really one bad loss was the Broncos game.
I agree.
They got blown out. I think all the other games, they were somewhat pretty much in it. I think they just made some mistakes down the end. Who they lose to? Okay, so you got the Broncos, they got the
Bucks, Chiefs, Raiders, and Cardinals.
The Chiefs game, okay, they were in that. Honestly, they were in that game despite the offense. The Raiders game, they probably should have won that game because the offense kind of got late start and some penalties. Who else? We said Raiders. Who else did we lose to?
Cardinals.
That was a game they were in too.
Yeah.
And then
Tampa, obviously, and
Tampa in the beginning of the year. So, honestly, I think the Bucks have had better. They've had worse losses this season than the Cowboys have. To be honest with you.
Yeah, they have.
But to go to your comparison, I don't know. I think I would have to say no. I just don't think they're the same. Just because I just don't think that. Because Tampa didn't run the ball at all, right? Last year. I think they started really committing to the run towards the end of the year with Leonard Fournette. The Cowboys, they want to be committed to the run, but Kellen Moore kind of shies away from it. But I think in the front of their mind, they want to run the ball, where the Bucks were like, no, we're not running. Tom, let's throw down the field like 20 times a game. We'll be good. But I guess I have to see them on this run, man, to kind of maybe see from your perspective how they are similar. I just don't see that though.
I think, and something else too, is you look at Tampa last year, and again, I'm not saying Dallas was as good as Tampa was last year. I'm not ensuing that. But when you look at, say, Tampa's running game, like Dallas' running game, at least if you exclude the Philadelphia game, the last game of the year where Zeke looked, kind of like Zeke,
right.
They kind of, like you said, went away from the run a little bit. But once you get to the playoffs, and it's not a sexy term, you do need your quarterback to play well, of course, absolutely. But
you got to run the football though.
You got to run the football, and it's cliche, but defense wins championships.
It does.
And when you've got the playmaker, obviously led by the playmaker, Micah Parsons, the lion backer, as people have called him, and you got DeMarcus Lawrence who can get after the pass rush. You look last year, Shaq Barrett and JPP and Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh inside. I don't know. There's some similarities.
I think that's where the Cowboys are weak, though, in the middle. Like, I like those guys.
Gallimore's good, though.
He is, but he's more of a pass rushing type of defensive tackle versus like a run stopper, because that's the Cowboys' weakness on their defense, is right up the middle. And so I think for me, and I don't know if we'll talk about that, but like that matchup this weekend with the Niners, that's a little concerning because the Niners are going to want to exploit that.
Yeah. So you know what?
And I don't like LVE. He, God, that guy. I don't.
Vander Esch?
Yeah, I just.
No, I've sold my stock on him. We're gonna have to listen,
because the Bucks have Vita Vea. The Bucks have Sue. Like, they have Dawgs. They have guys that are like run stuffers. Like, we don't really have run stuffers. We have a lot of fast defensive linemen. Like, Neville Gallimore is our biggest guy, and maybe Carlos Watkins. I think he's a bigger guy too. But to me, they're more like pass rushers.
Watkins definitely gets after the quarterback.
Yeah, so we get after the quarterback if we put teams in passing situations. But I don't know, and I'm just basically speaking from what I remember. I don't know where the Cowboys rank in rush defense statistically. I would assume it's not. It's maybe middle of the road, perhaps, maybe. So
yeah, it was like 20th when I checked, so not great. But so yeah, you make a good point that they're probably not as good as Tampa in that area. But I think. Let's talk about that match against San Francisco, because I wasn't aware of the fact that, like, Dallas, I think, had a better chance to get to like the 2 seed than the 3 seed because of some weird, tiebreakers and stuff.
Right.
But when after the 49ers and Rams game ended and I checked the standings, I was like, okay, so San Francisco jumps Philly, right? I'm like, okay, so they're going to play the Buccaneers. That's going to be interesting. I checked my phone. I'm like, oh crap, they play us. I was thinking, man, I would have much rather had the Cardinals with that beat up roster. Dallas going to come out more pissed off in the next matchup, wanting to get revenge.
Right.
And this one's kind of like, boy, you kind of ran into a sleeping giant. This is a team that was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I mean, they're no joke. What's kind of your your assessment of the Cowboys going into this game, because obviously what scares me is San Francisco running the football. I think Dallas, in some ways, Dak's going to have to play well, but they may have to beat San Francisco at their own game in some way. Like, it's going to have to be a factor.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think this is going to come down to the trenches, especially the way the Niners play. They play like a bully type of style of offense.
Yeah.
And even on defense, they get after it. And their offensive line is good too. They have physical guys like Deebo Samuel, who they'll give the ball to. He's a physical runner. The Cowboys are going to have to put an onus, and Dan Quinn's going to have to really focus on this, is stopping the run early in this game. If it gets out of hand, Jimmy Garoppolo will be all right, because then they'll slow down our pass rush. We got to put the ball in Jimmy G's hands, and his hands are literally hurt. So,
yeah,
and we have the pass rush. We know, I don't know necessarily we have the sacks to show for it, but as far as pressures are concerned, the Cowboys, I would assume, would be up there.
They're the top 10.
A lot of guys, at least top 10. So, but we got to stop them. I mean, their backs aren't like world beaters, and they don't need to be in the scheme that Shanahan runs. But you got Trent Williams, who's arguably the best left tackle in all of football. And no offense to Tyron Smith, but Trent Williams is a beast. I mean, I wish we had the guy, They got McGlinchey still in there, if I'm not mistaken. That's a good. And then you got George Kittle, who not only is a great pass catcher, he is so crucial to their run game. To me, that's why I think he's the best overall tight end, because he can catch and he can block, and not just like a little, let me block you. I'm talking, he's riding you guys out of play. He's erasing the ends. He's erasing corners, linebackers. So if we can stop them at the point of attack, the Cowboys would have a good chance, because then we can start rolling. And then the other key for me, especially on the offensive side for the Dallas Cowboys, you got to get Amari Cooper going early. He's got to get 4 or 5 targets within the first 2 or 3 series. Like, you got to get him going, because we've seen in the past, if you get him going, it opens up for CeeDee Lamb, Cedric Wilson. I think is not. I love Michael Gallup, and I kind of hope he does come back. I mean, I would like to see him get his money somewhere else, but Michael Gallup, to me, the Cedric Wilson is not that much of a drop off, because the only thing that hurts us now is that we have to move CD to the outside instead of being on the inside, which he's very, very, very good at. But Michael Gallup is more of an outside receiver, but nonetheless, Cedric Wilson to me is another key in this game. But again, we have to hold up, because then we're playing against the Bosa. We're playing against Armstead. We're playing against, I believe, D Ford is still on that team in the middle. What's the other kid out of South Carolina? Kinlaw.
Javon Kinlaw.
They got a lot of, and then Fred Warner, a very good middle linebacker.
Great player.
Dak is going to have to be very careful with those throws over the middle. But like you said, we have to run the football. Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, they got to get us going. And then Cooper, you give him some passes, you feed him early, and the Cowboys should have a good chance.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think with San Francisco, I mean, that's kind of what I'm going to get into with the weaknesses that some of these playoff teams have.
Right.
Is that, and look, to Jimmy Garoppolo's credit, the Rams, that was kind of their philosophy: hand the game to Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, to Jimmy G's credit, he drove him right down the field and tied the game and sent it to OT, and obviously got them that field goal, and they finished it off with the interception at the end.
He'll win some every now and then.
He does, but if you go home because the 49ers ran it down your throat, then you say, then we didn't give ourselves the best chance to win. Nope. If you win because Jimmy Garoppolo balls out and you outplays Dak,
right?
Okay, I mean, there's nothing you could do about that, because that's what you were asking, for them to do. So, I mean, I think there's a lot, and John says if the 49ers run the ball well, they will win the game. Yeah. I don't necessarily disagree.
I agree, because the Broncos had the blueprint. Teddy Bridgewater did not just blow us out. They ran the ball on us.
Melvin Gordon.
That's how you beat the Dallas Cowboys. You run the football, you keep the ball out of Dak's hands, and that's what you do. And you draw the game. And before you know it, it was like 30-something to nothing at halftime or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, how did that happen? Well, they kept the ball from the offense. And it puts so much pressure, because now your offense gets the ball. Like, we got to do something. Like, we can't afford to not score or get a touchdown here. So you start pressing. You start doing stuff that's out of your character. And so if I'm the Niners, I'm watching that tape. And if I'm the Cowboys, I'm watching that Broncos game. And I'm saying, where can we be better at?
No, absolutely. And look, that was obviously their worst game, but I think there's still plenty to take from that. And like you said, to add it to the San Francisco game plan. And also, Blake Jarwin's back in the lineup, so they're starting to work him back in. And also with Cedric Wilson, you make a good point about Cedric Wilson. He's not a better player than Michael Gallup.
Right.
But I remember, I think someone commented on Monday's show about Michael Gallup. And I said, I think Cedric Wilson works better with Dak. And this, to me, this is why Dez Bryant never worked with Dak Prescott.
Right.
Because at least toward the end of Dez's career, he kind of became a little bit of a one-trick pony.
Right.
Deep balls and jump balls, which, with Tony Romo, that was a perfect fit. That's what Tony specialized in.
Right.
Dak's more of a precision guy. He likes, that's why he worked with Amari Cooper for so long and CeeDee Lamb. Cedric Wilson's more, he can run more in the route tree, I think, than Michael Gallup. Like Gallup's the deep threat. Wilson can do a lot of things. Heck, he can throw passes. So I think there's more you can do in the Kellen Moore, Dak Prescott offense with Cedric Wilson than with Michael Gallup.
I definitely agree.
So let's move on to the AFC super fast, because I'm telling you, I'm starting to buy into Tennessee a little bit, Ryan, because if they get Derrick Henry back and he's 80% of what he used to be, with that defense with Mike Vrabel, hey, you're guaranteed all your games gonna be at home.
Hey, right.
As long as Ryan Tannehill doesn't screw this up, man.
Yeah. And their defense isn't that bad either. Like they're not terrible. I think they're better this year than they were last year.
Oh, way better. Way better.
They can get after the quarterback a little bit better, because the guy in the middle, Simmons, I believe his name is. He's been a godsend. I've always been high on the Tennessee Titans, even last year even though they lost in the playoff. I've always liked Mike Vrabel. I think he's one of the best coaches that doesn't get a lot of credit. He knows the game. You can see. I don't know if he can develop guys, but his strategy his tactics are on point with the best right now. And the kid that they got running the ball now, he's actually not that bad either. I forgot his name. I forgot his name. But the guy that's running the ball now for them, I'm not saying he's Derrick Henry. What's his name?
Foreman, I think.
Yeah, Foreman.
He played in Texas. Yeah,
right. Like he's not Derrick Henry, but like he's looking good. But AJ Brown is the key. You saw when he got back in the lineup that game against the Niners, what they were able to do. And then Julio's he's gotten back. He's back on path. He was hurt a little bit. And Tannehill is not gonna just overwhelm you, but he's not that bad. He can get out of the pocket. He can throw off schedule. And you got guys like AJ Brown and Julio Jones to throw to. You're gonna be all right, man. And as long as you don't turn the ball over, they should be okay. He's a Mike coach of the year. Honestly, I would not be mad
agree.
if he got that. Honestly, I would not be mad. I mean,
agree.
There's some other guys out there, but Mike Vrabel does not get a lot of credit for
Here's what impressed me about Mike Vrabel. They had a ton of injuries all season long, including to literally the driving force of their entire organization. Yeah. And they had the best record in football against teams with a winning record. Yeah. I mean, they went on the road and thumped the Rams.
Matter of fact, I think they were undefeated against playoff teams from last year. I think they were like 6-0, 7-0, some crazy stat like that. And I'm like, that's a good football team, man.
And look, I get Kansas City's the betting favorite to come out of the AFC. I understand they went to back-to-back Super Bowls, but Tennessee did beat them 27-3. So something that they're doing is working. But I'm with you, man. I don't think it's crazy to say Tennessee wins the AFC. I really don't. And it's weird to say that about a number one seed, but it feels like, and I was a doubter going into the season. I think you remember I had them finishing like 8 and 9. Like I wasn't.
Remember, I had them winning it. I still had them winning it. I believe in them because I know I never played in the NFL, but I've been seeing it a lot. I've known there's a certain formula, and you look at all the good teams that have won Super Bowls or have been successful, right? Because not all the time you got to win the Super Bowl. Only one team can win the Super Bowl. But if you look at all the good teams in the last 10 years, man, they all have kind of similar traits. They do certain things the same way. And I feel like the Titans, they're not going to wow you like Mahomes and the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. They're not going to do that. They don't have the offense power like the Cowboys with Julio, Amari and CD and Zeke. They got guys that are going to come in. They're going to play within the framework of the strategy. And it's all about execution, man. And they execute it at a very high level. And that's why I appreciate what they've done in the last couple of years since he's been there.
He's been outstanding. And sticking in the division real quick, I don't think I've ever seen a regular season collapse like the Indianapolis Colts. Because, I mean, that was the narrative all seasons around. There's the team you don't want to see in the playoffs. Well, you're not going to see them at all in the playoffs now. To me, and I think you're going to agree with me on this, it all has to do with number 2 for them, Carson Wentz. And I'm telling you, He's got all the physical abilities. I get
Yeah.
that. I understand that. And you can't discredit the fact that he's got
Right.
a massive arm and moves around
Right.
well. I question his leadership intangibles. There are
Yep.
some guys in Philly that like Nick Foles, who's not even close to his talent.
Right.
They like Nick Foles better than Carson Wentz.
Right.
Inconsistency, he's up and down. He's Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
He's missing throws he should make. He's making throws that, like, you're thinking, what are you doing? Like Phillip Rivers, bad interceptions.
Yeah.
And by the way, speaking of Phillip Rivers, they go 11-5 last year with the 40-year-old Phillip Rivers, with a young Carson Wentz who has everything to prove. They go 9-8 and miss the playoffs.
Will you make the playoffs?
What's your takeaway on what happened on Sunday against the Jaguars of all teams, and just how it fell apart?
I think a lot of it falls on the shoulders of Carson Wentz, but their offensive line was not that good this year. Which, and I get it. They had some injuries. They had at one point they had four out of 5 of their starters were missing because of COVID and other related injuries. So I understand that. But overall, he got sacked like 5 or 6 times. 2 of those were maybe on him. They did not protect him well enough this season. Now Jonathan Taylor is the highlight of that team. He's the future going forward. But honestly, they're gonna have to figure out the quarterback situation, because you bring in Carson Wentz because of the Frank Reich situation, the connection that they had back in Philly. It kind of really never got off the ground. Like he had a couple of good weeks where he was like, okay, Carson Wentz, he might be decent, but then boom, he does something like he goes back to being Carson Wentz again. Like it's two things you're waiting for with Carson Wentz to drop. When is he going to throw an untimely interception, and when is he going to get hurt? Now, he got hurt earlier in the year. He kind of bounced back, missed a little bit of time. I think he missed 1 game or 2 games, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. I mean, he can play in the National Football League, but you're gonna have to, if you're a team and you're in bed with him, you have to know that it's a risk. It's a huge risk, because he can come in and spark your team, and he can also derail them. And honestly, I'm not gonna put all of it on him. Their defense has to play better too. I mean, Darius Leonard, all those guys. I mean, like, you can't let Jacksonville just run all over you like that too.
Although Wentz set them up in some bad situations.
He did. But I'm talking about the last 2 games where they just lose. It's like, the Raider game, then the Jags. It's like, and I told a buddy of mine, I was like, listen, there's a chance that the Colts will probably lose. And he's like, no, they'll win. I was like, they ain't won there since 2014. Like, that's 2014, dude.
That's a long time.
That you know what I mean? Like that's a long time when you think about that. So it's a reason why I don't think they need to overhaul the team completely. I think they got some guys, they got to get healthy again. But I think they're married to Carson Wentz for at least 1 more season. But again, who are you going to get? My thing is, when you're going out to look to replace a quarterback, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, who's out there, right? Obviously Deshaun Watson, but I don't see them in the market for him, because I think that they're stable enough of an organization. They don't need a Deshaun Watson to kind of help them, because they run the football and they play defense. And I think those will, time and time again, that'll win you a lot of football games in the National Football League. But who do you go and get? Honestly, you have to stick with Carson Wentz until something else develops. And then you're like, well, we got to move off from him. Same thing in Cleveland. Like, what do you do with Baker Mayfield? Yeah. But back to Indianapolis, it's like, what are you going to do? Okay, you bench him or you get rid of him. Who's out there? Who's his backup? Jacob Eason? Is he
Jacob Eason, Sam Ehlinger?
Sam Ehlinger. Are they better than Carson Wentz? No, they're not. So
no, of course not.
So you have to kind of run it back with him, and you just hope he don't screw up enough, or you have to make plays despite what he's going to do. So that means Jonathan Taylor, you're going to have to run for over 150 every game. You're going to have to score 2 touchdowns. Darius Leonard, you guys are going to have to pitch more shutouts, or only give up field goals instead of touchdowns when you have that quick change where he throws an interception. So those are the things you're going to have to look out for him. But I just don't see what they're going to do with him other than to run it back, like John said.
Yeah, and I think with Cleveland, and what it stems from is options.
Right.
With the Los Angeles Rams, for example, people are like, oh, that's kind of risky letting go of Goff, but they knew Matthew Stafford was available in a trade, and Matthew Stafford, I think, had a no trade clause, so he's an upgrade. It's an upgrade. So you're like, okay, all right. So the Lions are looking to move on from Stafford. He would say yes to LA. All right, let's make it happen. You've got a sure thing.
Right.
Whereas, say with the Browns, and I'm not a Baker fan the slightest.
Right.
But who's the upgrade?
Who's there? Are you
That's the
you're
only thing that's
Case
holding me back.
Keenum? You're gonna stick with Case Keenum for a full season? We've been there, done that. We know he's no better than Baker Mayfield. So
No, he's not.
these teams that missed out on quarterbacks last year, they're screwed. They're screwed, man. Until they, and honestly, let's be real too. And I know we're not talking about college, but in the next couple of years, who's that guy out of college that we're like, all right, like I like that guy,
Bryce Young, and that's all I can think of.
Right, and I have my doubts about him still.
Okay.
So I mean, I like the kid. I think he's nice, but I don't know. Is he an NFL quarterback? Well, we'll have to wait and see in the next couple of years. But what I'm saying is, we knew back in the day, guys ahead of time, like, yeah, like that guy's gonna be like when Trevor Lawrence, when he won that national championship his freshman year, like he's gonna be a first round pick, hands down.
Yeah,
we don't have guys like that right now.
I don't think so either. Real quick, 2 rapid fire questions.
Sure.
So NBA question, the NFL question. NBA.
Okay.
So who would you take right now, the 96 Chicago Bulls of the 2017 Warriors? Because Steph Curry did an interview with GQ, and he said, I'd absolutely take us. And, of course, Michael Jordan would take the Bulls. Who do you think would win? And I don't know, in a 7-game series, let's put it that way. Not one game, 7-game series.
Well, can I ask you a question, though?
Yes.
What style are we playing? Are we playing
That's a good question.
Jordan's style, or are we playing today's NBA? Because I think that does make a significant difference in how that game is played. But I mean, okay, and if you want to answer, that's fine too. But do you want to answer that? Or
just here's my take on it. And I've told people this in the past.
Right.
And I'm a Warriors fan, as people know. I think if the game is played in 1996, I would take the Bulls in 7 games. I think just the sheer talent alone by Golden State, you get to rough them up more. But what are you going to do to stop Kevin Durant? Like, what are you going to do to stop that? You can rough them up all you want.
Right. I think so.
PJ Tucker did that in the playoffs and did nothing, right?
Right.
And Steph, there's only so much you can do to stop the greatest shooter ever.
Right.
If the game is played in 2017, I think the Warriors would sweep them. Because outside of Michael Jordan, who's going to hurt you offensively?
Right.
Like, I mean, hurt you offensively.
Right. No,
so what's your take on it?
I agree. I think, honestly, I would probably still take the Warriors in both scenarios because let's just be real. I grew up, watching 90s basketball in the NBA. Like, it was physical, but I think there's this narrative out there that it was like brass knuckles and shards of glass, and like it wasn't like the Thunderdome. Okay, it wasn't Mad Max, Mel Gibson type. Like, it was physical. They would call fouls. The only difference is today they review stuff. So one thing that would have been a flagrant today wouldn't have been a flagrant because they don't review that. But like you said, who can consistently guard Kevin Durant? I mean, you can throw Scottie Pippen. You can probably throw Dennis Rodman out there. But I think the athletes today are way more prepared than athletes back then. And I think that obviously the big matchup would be Kevin Durant because Kevin Durant, no one matches up. This guy's today they can't match up with him. And I think he would prove to be a little bit too much. And look, you think about Steve Kerr and Steph Curry, like, come on, like no. That's not even a debate. I mean, I think Klay Thompson and Scottie Pippen may wash each other out in a sense, maybe. And then you got Jordan. Jordan
would probably guard Steph. Actually, no, Harper would probably guard Steph. I think Pippen would take Durant, honestly.
But Pippen would probably have to. But I think I don't know about the sweep, but I think because Jordan is just too much of a competitor, he will not want to lose. But I still will probably give the slight edge to the Warriors just because they can shoot it better at a higher clip than Jordan's Bulls can, and that pains me to say because I love Jordan and I love that 96 Bulls team. That was one of the greatest basketball teams I've ever seen play. But just the way the game is played now, it's faster. It's a faster pace. Guys can score more. Like you said, who's going to really? Where are you going to get all that offense from the Chicago Bulls other than Jordan? Maybe Pippen, and that's about it.
Yeah, and maybe Kukoc too. But I think what's interesting is I feel like at least, especially by players from that time. 90s and early 2000s basketball is so over glorified. Like they act like, I mean, they just had to go through. I mean, like
a blaze of fire to get to the arena. Like, like it was physical. Don't get me wrong. In the 80s, I grew up in the 80s too, and but like I said, they didn't call things back then that they would call now. Okay, it was physical. It was the Jordan rules, whatever. But I get it.
I agree with you. Okay, last question before we let you get out of here.
Sure.
your favorite to win the Super Bowl, not get to win the Super Bowl.
To get to the Super Bowl, you said, right?
No, to win it.
To
I
win
hit
it.
you with a hard one.
Jeez. Honestly, let's see. I don't want to go chalk, so I don't want to say Green Bay. Man, I'm not gonna put it past Tom Brady. I ain't gonna lie, man. I think the Buccaneers have a good chance because Tom Brady is still playing football. And I think he was gonna do his best to get them back there. You know, the NFC is tough, but he's the best quarterback that's there besides Aaron Rodgers. And I think he doesn't make a lot of mistakes like Aaron Rodgers would probably make. It pays me to say because I love my Cowboys, but I got to keep it real. And I'll probably go with the Buccaneers again to win it again, go back to back.
All right. I mean, that's who I predicted going into the season. I'm pretty sure. Isn't that who you predicted going into the season, if I'm not mistaken?
I forgot. We'd have to go back and watch your show.
We'd have to go back.
I didn't do a preview like you did. Yours was excellent, but I don't remember. I think we had the Bucks. I think we both had the Bucks.
I think so.
But honestly, I take that back. Let's go. I'm gonna ride with the Titans.
I like it. I like it.
Let's go. Remember the Titans. Let's go.
Remember that. Yeah. That's perfect. 20-year anniversary of the movie or something? Yeah, do the dance too. Yes, perfect. That's the greatest movie ever. All right. Appreciate you coming on the show, Ryan, as always.
Man.
Everybody check out Clutch Sports Talk. Tell them where they can check out your Sunday show. Because that, to me, I love your Monday shows, but your Sunday shows are awesome.
Appreciate it, man. So you can catch me live on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I might do something tomorrow to kind of get everyone locked and loaded for the games for Saturday. I gotta carve out some time. You like how I did that right there. I gotta carve out some time. Yeah. I don't know, but definitely for sure Sunday. I'll probably be recapping the Saturday games. And then also you can catch me Monday nights on YouTube with my Clutch Live show, which basically goes over everything that happened in the NFL and anything else in the sports world. So you can catch that there as well. It's a good time. It's definitely a good time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate you coming on, Ryan. Have a good one.
Yeah, man. God bless you. Peace.
God bless. All right, that was Ryan Flores of Clutch Sports Talk Live. Great buddy of mine. Again, he created this overlay. He created this whole thing, and so you got to give him credit for that. Real quick before I get into the playoff weaknesses, John says, and I remember you did say this. He said Green Bay and the Bills. I also had the Bills winning the AFC. I don't know how confident I am in taking Buffalo at this point, John. I don't know, man. Like, I got to roll with Tennessee right now in the AFC. Honestly, if Kansas City and Buffalo match up, and if they both win their playoff games, they will match up. I got to roll with the Bills in that one because they match up better against Kansas City than the other way around. But Green Bay, man, I'm not sold on Green Bay. As far as winning the Super Bowl, I'm not saying they can't win a playoff game, although I think they won't, but that's another conversation for another day. So, yeah, I mean, let's go and get into it. So, we all know this about playoff teams. Hold on, I'm trying to dial up the music here. All right, hold on. All right, here we go. All right. Listen, we all know this about playoff teams. There's no team that's perfect. We know that to be a fact. There's teams that can't contend for the Super Bowl, and then there's teams that are just happy to be in the playoffs. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think at the end of the day, each team has at least one glaring problem that they need to address if they want to win the Super Bowl or at least even compete in the playoffs. And I'm going to give you my list, the 14 playoff teams, the number one weakness that they have that could hold them back from winning a Super Bowl. So let's get the background music going, and let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. What's the Pittsburgh Steelers' weakness, you ask? Major limitations at quarterback with Big Ben Roethlisberger. Look, the thing with the Steelers is this. Look, I'm glad he's in the playoffs. One last hurrah. I get that. But, guys, he's not been good this season because Big Ben Roethlisberger ranks 14th in touchdown passes, 14th in yards, 15th in touchdown passes, 24th in passer rating, and 25th in QBR. The Steelers are a team, although they don't stop the run horribly well, and that's also a glaring problem of theirs. They got TJ Watt. He's the Defensive Player of the Year. There's no questions asked about it. He tied Michael Strahan's sack record in less games than Strahan played, if I'm not mistaken. You've got the secondary. Offensively, I think you have playmakers. Juju Smith-Schuster was just activated off of IR today. Najee Harris had a great rookie season. To me, he's runner-up to Jamar Chase for Offensive Rookie of the Year. The offensive line, it's come around. You got that guy, Freiermuth, the tight end they have, who's going to be a really good player, Deontay Johnson. It's just kind of held back by their quarterback. And look, good for Ben that he's in the playoffs, but that's going to be what gets them beat on Sunday night against Kansas City. There's no way they're winning that game. The New England Patriots, the 6th seed in the AFC. Quarterback's limitations have been exposed. I think this is pretty obvious. Mac Jones, I know everybody loves Mac Jones, and as great of a coach as they have, and a defense as they have, and a running game as they have, it's not going to matter because he's not good enough to go along for that ride to go win a Super Bowl, because they'd have to win a road playoff game the whole way through. That's number one. But number two is this. Mac Jones, 13th in passing yards, 15th in passing touchdowns, 15th in passer rating, 15th in QBR. I'm impressed. By the way, the Patriots finished 1-3 in their last 4 games after a 7-game winning streak. And that's in large part because defensive coordinators figured out the Maxter. Because in those 4 games, these last 4 games of the regular season, and by the way, that one win came against the Jaguars, which, hey, Mac Jones did something that Carson Wentz couldn't. But in those games, Mac Jones, 6 touchdowns, 5 picks, and a 51 QBR. And again, those numbers are skewed because that Jaguars game, it's Jacksonville. That's why I was so mad at Carson Wentz. It's Jacksonville. Congratulations. Everybody puts up big numbers against Jacksonville. They're not winning a playoff game. I'm sorry. The limitations at quarterback in New England is going to hold them back. Now to the Vegas Raiders. Defense struggles to get off the field. They were 26th in points allowed. And here's the thing. Look, again, it's cliche, but defense wins championships. We all know this to be true. Defense wins championships in the National Football League. And for the Raiders, they ain't got one. Yes, like Ryan brought up earlier, you've got Max Crosby. You got Ngakoue. You got guys that can get after the quarterback. The secondary is straight up trash. It is horrible. And they tried to address that in the draft, but we all know how John Gruden drafted, and that's horribly. And so just overall as an organization, they cannot seem to find a defensive back. And so you can't win playoff games by just outscoring teams. And against an offense like the Cincinnati Bengals that they're going to play on Saturday afternoon, Burrow, Chase, Mixon, Higgins, Tyler Boyd. I mean, that's a lot of guys for that secondary to have to stop. And I just don't. I think that's going to be what is the end of the Raiders in these playoffs. They cannot stop anybody. The team that they are playing. Speaking of the Cincinnati Bengals, what's their issue? Offensive line cannot protect Burrow whatsoever. Because, and I said this going into the season, I did not like Cincinnati's offensive line because they try to address that need in the draft. And look, it's hindsight's 2020. I said take Penei Sewell. They took Jamar Chase. Clearly that worked out. Clearly I was wrong, even though Penei Sewell's a great player in Detroit. But Joe Burrow was sacked more times than any quarterback in the National Football League, 51 times. Second place was Ryan Tannehill. He was sacked 47 times and played one more game than Joe Burrow. And so the offensive line isn't good. So when you're going against the elite defensive lines, the Kansas Cities, possibly if something crazy were to happen, the Pittsburghs or the Buffaloes or the Titans, you can't. Those playmakers like Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, they're irrelevant if Joe Burrow's on his butt the whole game. And that's their issue. That is what's going to get the Cincinnati Bengals beat in the playoffs. My AFC title pick, the Buffalo Bills, what's their issue? Which Josh Allen would he get? That's my question. Which Josh Allen is going to show up on Sunday? Because I thought if you'd asked me a month ago, what's the Bills' biggest problem? I said, it's running the football. But the last 4 games, they've rushed for 159 yards per game on average. So they're running the football plenty well enough. But these last 4 in which the Bills actually closed on the 4-game winning streak, Josh Allen has been hot. Josh Allen has been cold. Josh Allen could go from 300 pass yards and 100 rushing with a 100 passer rating against the Tampa Bay Bucks. And he could turn around a week later to a 44 QBR against the Panthers the next week. He could go from a 100 passer rating against the Patriots in the Bills' biggest game of the season to having the worst game of his career against the Atlanta Falcons and having a 17 passer rating. So which Josh Allen are you going to get? Are you going to get the guy who has the big arm, who's accurate, who moves around well, or are you going to get the guy that can't seem to complete a pass? It's very much like Cam Newton, right? Big, strong guys. Obviously, he doesn't run as well as Cam, but he moves around well enough. Big arm. When he's great, it's MVP stuff. When he's bad, it's when it rains, it pours in that regard. So, which Josh Allen are you going to get? That's going to be the biggest thing for the Buffalo Bills. The Kansas City Chiefs, the team that's went to back-to-back Super Bowls, what's their biggest problem? Defense is frustratingly inconsistent. And that's the truth. Earlier this season, they were horrible. Middle of the season, nobody could score on them. End of the season, they're right back to being not horrible, but they're still not very good, because in the first 7 games of the season for the Chiefs, they gave up, on average, 29 points per game. In the following 6 games, they gave up 11 points per game. That's basically 3 touchdown difference. But now here in the last 4, they gave up 24 points per game. So it's been up and down. You don't know what you're getting from the Kansas City Chiefs in regards to how they're going to play defensively. And there's some elite offenses in the AFC. Of course, now they've done a good job of stopping the Raiders, but the Raiders are no joke. And you've got Cincinnati, who beat Kansas City just a couple weeks back by pretty much outscoring them. Buffalo dropped 38 on their head in a game earlier this season. And obviously Tennessee with Derrick Henry, they dropped 27 on Kansas City's defense. So you're not going to be playing the Denver Broncos every week. They barely beat Denver, which is a little concerning. But that's the Kansas City Chiefs' biggest and most glaring problem. And then finally, the number 1 seed in the AFC, the team that does not have to play this weekend, the Tennessee Titans. What's their biggest the biggest weakness? What's going to get them beat in the playoffs? Tannehill needs to stay out of the way. And he does. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if the game comes down to Ryan Tannehill, you may be in a little bit of trouble. And the numbers back it up. In the Titans' 2 playoff wins with Ryan Tannehill, he's averaged 80 passing yards, and he's gotten 209 rushing yards, and the defense has only given up 12.5 points per game. In the 2 losses in the playoffs with Ryan Tannehill, the Tennessee Titans have given up 28 points per game, and they've only ran for 68 yards, while Tannehill has thrown for an average of 187. So basically, it's okay, Ryan, we need you to be a game manager. Don't turn the ball over. Be good in the red zone. We'll take it from here. If the defense balls out, if Derrick Henry looks like Derrick Henry and he should be back for the postseason, look out for the Tennessee Titans. As Ryan pointed out and as I pointed out, I think they're the favorites to win the AFC, even over Kansas City, because of the defense and because of the running game that they have, not to mention A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. But don't feel tempted to go to them just because you want to go with them. Go to them. Because you've got the defense, you got the running game. But I think if it comes down to Ryan Tannehill, him beating you with his arm or him winning you a Super Bowl with his arm, I just don't think that's going to happen. Let's transition now to the NFC, starting with the 7-seed Philadelphia Eagles. They struggle mightily against good teams. As a matter of fact, this season, they're 1-7 against teams with a winning record, and the only win came against the Saints, who didn't even make the playoffs. So they're really 0-7 against playoff teams. And then the rest of the way, of course, they're 8-1 against non-playoff teams or teams with a losing record. And so that's the thing that scares me a little bit for Philadelphia. Right? They play well later in the season, and I get they play backups on Saturday, but they got mollywopped by the Dallas Cowboys. 51-26. And again, toward the end there, that was Dallas's backups too. That was Cooper Rush and some of the guys they had in there. And they still just dominated the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Dallas is obviously a lot better than Philadelphia, but I just think it's a glaring problem that you struggle mightily, like against Kansas City or against Tampa, who they're going to play this weekend. They struggle against those teams. I think that's what's going to get them beat in the postseason. Let's go to the team that my Cowboys unfortunately have to play, but I think there's a system to beat them. That's the San Francisco 49ers. Their biggest problem? Same problem as the Titans. Same problem as the Titans. In the 2 playoff wins under Jimmy Garoppolo, or Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, okay? He's thrown for an average of 104 yards, so he's barely cracked 100. But he's gotten help from the defense that's only given up 15 points per game, and the running game has given him 235 yards. So the running game doesn't have to be good. It has to be otherworldly, as well as the defense, in order for the 49ers to contend for a Super Bowl, which I still think they can. I don't think you want to run into this team. That's why I didn't want the Cowboys to run into this team in the playoffs. Get the game to Jimmy Garoppolo if you're the Cowboys defense. If you do, you should be good. Because in the Super Bowl loss against Kansas City, Jimmy G threw for 219 while he got 141 yards, still good, but the defense gave up 31. So he's completely, listen, we all know quarterbacks need help from defense and running game. That's a well-known fact. But then there's quarterbacks who completely rely on it. And Jimmy Garoppolo and Ryan Tannehill, this is why I said they have the same problem as the Titans. Those two are those guys. And so I think that's what's going to get the 49ers beat in the postseason. Let's go now to a division rival, the Cardinals, the 49ers. It is the Arizona Cardinals. What's their biggest issue? Kingsbury's inability to adjust. Because in his 3 years as the Cardinals head coach, in 2019, 2020, 2021, from November on to the end of each of those seasons, he has a combined record of 9-16. What does that mean? It means that once we get to November, we know who's good and we know who's not. We know who's good and we know who's great. And Cliff Kingsbury has shown an inability to adjust to coordinators and other head coaches getting film on his Arizona Cardinals. By the way, he dealt with the same issue at Texas Tech. Look at his record late in seasons over there. He struggled. And so at the end of the day for the Cardinals, it's, can your head coach adjust? And I'm not real sure he can. And that's what I think is going to be the downfall of the Arizona Cardinals this year. The team that they are playing, a division rival of theirs this weekend, the Los Angeles Rams, what's their issue? It's a little long. Despite veteran roster, quarterback underperforms in big moments. And it's true. Matthew Stafford is 0-3 in playoff games. This is his 13th year in the league now, right? It's put up or shut up time, as I said when he was traded to Los Angeles. He's got the defense, got the running game, got the weapons, got the coach, got the special teams even. In the last month, Matthew Stafford has not played well, okay? Because he's thrown 8 touchdowns and thrown the same number of picks. So 8 touchdowns, but 8 picks in the last 4 games with an average QBR of 52. So middle of the pack. He's had games against the Vikings where he's horrible. He throws 3 interceptions, but the defense bails him out. I'm not saying he's Jimmy Garoppolo or Ryan Tannehill, in which he's completely reliant on defense and running game in order to win. But when they're not working, I feel like the Rams are going to kind of come crash into a screeching halt. Or I'm sorry, they're going to come to a screeching halt because that's going to be the end of their season. Moving on to my Cowboys. This is a painful one, but it's true. Horrendous kicking game and even worse, clock management. We all know about the clock management. It speaks for itself. Mike McCarthy does not know how to run the clock. That was evidence in his days in Green Bay. We know that. But Greg Zuerlein, I don't know what's happened. He was decent last year. This year, he's come apart. You can't rely on him to make extra points. He makes the big kicks, but the 35-yarders, he shanks or he pulls. We act like kickers aren't that valuable. Ask Baltimore how valuable Justin Tucker is. That man has won them playoff games, literally. He's won them playoff games. If the season comes down to the foot of Greg Zuerlein, I am terrified. If it comes down to clock management, I may not even watch the TV. It's that scary for me as a Cowboys fan. Now to the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're falling apart physically. That's the Bucs' issue. Key guys are beat up for them. Look, everybody's beat up this point of year, but for Tampa, it is very, very important players that are either down or are really fighting through some pretty serious injuries, because for the Bucs, Fournette, Barrett, JPP are all nursing injuries. They're all coming back from pretty serious injuries, though, right? Mike Evans is beat up. You have Levante David and Jamel Dean, 2 key players in that defense, especially Levante David, who's a beast, who are still out due to injury. And, of course, you have Chris Godwin, who's gone for the year. And, of course, you have the Antonio Brown situation, which speaks for itself. But this is a team that I think physically is reeling a little bit. And so, like I said, if Tom Brady pulls this off, he's already the GOAT, so I don't even know what I do at that point. If he pulls this off with a roster that's falling apart, I don't even know what to say. And then finally, the 1 seed in the NFC, the Green Bay Packers. Run defense and special teams are a disaster. And they are. The Packers ranked 22nd in the National Football League in special teams. And in regards to their rushing defense, it's ranked 11th in the NFL. You're like, okay, how's that a disaster? It's 11th. It's up there. Here's the problem. Their offense has built them leads in so many games, it doesn't matter. And keep in mind, Green Bay plays in the worst division in football. Yards per carry, you know where the Packers rank? Yards per carry given up, rather. You know where the Packers rank? Third to last. Only the Steelers and the Chiefs are worse. And so, you ain't going to be playing the Chicago Bears in the playoffs. Or the Minnesota Vikings. You darn sure aren't going to be playing the Detroit Lions. And so, against these teams that can run the football, the Rams, the 49ers, the Bucks, the Cowboys, that's going to be an issue. Like, you're going to be in close games in the playoffs. You're not just going to blow through everybody like you did your own division. And special teams-wise, Mason Crosby has gone completely south. And they make some mistakes on special teams that are undisciplined penalties, or they'll let Jakeem Grant go 97 yards to the house in a Sunday night game I watched. So, Aaron Rodgers is great, 7-8 in the playoffs since that Super Bowl, but that's neither here nor there. You know, Aaron struggles, but to me, he's not the biggest issue for the Packers this postseason. By the way, I don't even trust Matt LaFleur either. But that's the problem with these 14 teams. Maybe it's a sort of a negative segment. I hope I didn't come across as that. But look, no team is perfect. And so even people say, oh, yeah, Green Bay's a shoo-in to win the NFC. No, they're not. Okay, you got Rodgers and Devontae Adams. That's great, even though Aaron struggled in the playoffs. Defensively, you can't stop the run. And winning championships is about excellent quarterback play. Okay, check for the Packers. But you got to be able to run the football, which they can't do consistently, and stop the run. And people discount special teams. That can literally win you a championship or cost you your season. Ask Adam Vinatieri. Or better yet, ask Tom Brady. Okay, Adam Vinatieri won 2 of those Super Bowls, 2 of Tom's 7 rings with game-winning kicks. Special teams matters. The Packers don't do that very well. So there you go. 14 playoff teams, 14 weaknesses. That's what I got. So with that, kind of a long show today, but we had a lot to discuss. Tomorrow's show is going to be fun because I'm going to be doing super wild card predictions. We got 6 games, 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, 1 on Monday night for the first time in playoff history. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. Hopefully COVID doesn't screw this up. I got no words. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. These playoffs are going to be amazing. So with that, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button you see at the top. See at the top? Right there. Yeah, the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. And be sure to catch the show tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on those 3 platforms. If you've been listening to the Carving It Up podcast, we appreciate that as well. You've been listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. So until tomorrow, hope everybody has a great evening. Continue to stay safe. God bless you all. Peace out. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.